Burn, witch, burn. Written by Abraham Merritt. Narrated by Edward E. French. Chapter 6. The Peter's Doll. Shevlin watched me as I stared at the doll. He was satisfied by its effect upon me. "A hell of a looking thing, ain't it?" he asked. "The doctor sees it, McCann. I told you he had brains." He jounced the doll down upon his knee, and sat there like a red-faced ventriloquist with a peculiarly malevolent dummy. Certainly it would not have surprised me to have heard the diabolic laughter issue from its faintly grinning mouth. "Now I'll tell you, Dr. Lowell," Shevlin went on. "I stands there looking at this doll, and I picks it up. 'There's more in this than meets the eye, Tim Shevlin,' I says to myself. And I looks to see what's become of the drunk. He's standing where I left him, and I walk over to him, and he says, 'Was it a doll like I told you? Huh? I told you it was a doll. That's him,' he says, getting a peek at what I'm carrying. So I says to him, 'Young fellow, me lad, there's something wrong here. You're going to the station with me and tell the lieutenant what you told me and show him your legs and all,' I says. And the drunk says, 'Fair enough, but keep that thing on the other side of me.' So we go to the station. The lieutenant's there, and the sergeant and a couple of flatties. I marches up and sticks the doll on the top of the desk in front of the lieutenant. 'What's this?' he says, grinning. 'Another kidnapping?' 'Show him your legs,' I tells the drunk. 'Not unless they're better than the Follies,' grins this potato-brained ape. But the drunk's rolled up his pants and down his socks and shows 'em. 'What the hell done that?' says the lieutenant, standing up. 'The doll,' says the drunk. The lieutenant looks at him and sits back blinking, and I tells him about answering the drunk's yells, and what he tells me and what I see. The sergeant laughs, and the flatties laugh, but the lieutenant gets red in the face and says, 'Are you trying to kid me, Shevlin?' And I says, I'm telling you what he tells me and what I seen, and there's the doll.' And he says, 'His bootleg is fierce, but I never knew it was catching.' And he crooks his finger at me and says, 'Come up here. I want to smell your breath.' And then I knows it's all up, because to tell the truth, the drunk had a flask, and I took one with him. Only one, and the only one I'd had. But there it was, on me breath. And the lieutenant says, 'I thought so. Get down.' And then he starts bellering and hollering at the drunk. 'You with your soup and nuts and your silk hat. You ought to be a credit to your city. And what the hell do you think you can do? Corrupt a good officer and kid me? You done the first, but you ain't doing the second,' he yelps. 'Put him in the cooler,' he yelps, 'and throw this damn doll in with him to keep him company.' And at that the drunk lets out a screech and drops to the floor. He out good and plenty. And the lieutenant says, 'The poor damned fool, by God, he believes his own lie. Bring him around and let him go.' And he says to me, 'If you weren't such a good man, Tim, I'd have you up for this. Take your degenerate doll and go home,' he says. 'I'll send a relief to your beat. And take tomorrow off and sober up,' says he. And I says to him, 'All right, but I seen what I seen. And to hell with you all,' I says to the flatties. And everybody's laughing fit and split, and I says to the lieutenant, 'If you break me for it or not, to hell with you too.' But they keep on laughing, so I take the doll and walk out." He paused. "I take the doll home," he resumed. "I tell it all to Maggie, me wife, and what does she tell me? 'To think you've been off the hard stuff for near off so long,' she says, 'and now look at you,' she says, 'with this talk of stabbing dolls and insulting the lieutenant and maybe getting sent to Staten Island,' she says, 'and Jenny just getting in high school. Go to bed,' she says, 'and sleep it off, and throw the doll in the garbage,' she says. But by now I'm getting good and mad, and I do not throw it in the garbage, but I take it with me. And a while ago I meet McCann. Somehow he knows something, and I tell him, and he brings me here. And just for what, I don't know." "Do you want me to speak to the lieutenant?" I asked. "What could you say?" he replied, reasonably enough. "If you tell him the drunk was right, and that I'm right, and I did see the doll run, what'll he think?" "He'll think you're as crazy as I must be. And if you explain maybe I was a little off me nut for just the minute, it's to the hospital they'll be sending me. No, doctor, I'm much obliged, but all I can do is say nothing more and be dignified and maybe hand out a shiner or two if they get too rough. It's grateful I am for the kindly way you've listened. It makes me feel better." Shevlin got to his feet, sighing heavily. "And what do you think? I mean, about what the drunks said he seen and what I seen?" he asked, somewhat nervously. "I cannot speak for the inebriate," I answered cautiously. "As for yourself, well, it might be that the doll had been lying out there in the street, and that a cat or dog ran across just as the automobile went by. Dog or cat escaped, but the action directed your attention to the doll, and you thought—" He interrupted me with a wave of his hand. All right. 'Tis enough. I'll just leave the doll with you to pay for the diagnosis, sir." With considerable dignity and perceptibly heightened color, Shevlin stalked from the room. McCann was shaking with silent laughter. I picked up the doll and laid it on my table. I looked at the subtly malignant little face, and I did not feel much like laughing. For some obscure reason, I took the Walters doll out of the drawer and placed it beside the other, took out the strangely knotted cord and set it between them. McCann was standing at my side, watching. I heard him give a low whistle. "Where did you get that, Doc?" He pointed to the cord. I told him. He whistled again. "The boss never knew he had it, that's sure. Wonder who slipped it over on him. The hag, of course. But how?" "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Why, the witch's ladder." He pointed again to the cord. "That's what they call it down Mexico way. It's bad medicine. The witch slips it to you, and then she has power over you." He bent over the cord. "Yep, it's the witch's ladder. The 9 knots in woman's hair. And in the boss's pocket." He stood staring at the cord. I noticed he made no attempt to pick it up. "Take it up and look at it closer, McCann," I said. "Not me." He stepped back. "I'm telling you, it's bad medicine, Doc." I had been steadily growing more and more irritated against the fog of superstition gathering ever heavier around me, and now I lost my patience. "See here, McCann," I said hotly. "Are you, to use Shevlin's expression, trying to kid me? Every time I see you, I am brought face to face with some fresh outrage against credibility. First it is your doll in the car, then Shevlin, and now your witch's ladder. What's your idea?" He looked at me with narrowed eyes, a faint flush reddening the high cheekbones. "The only idea I got," he drawled, more slowly than usual, "is to see the boss on his feet, and to get whoever got him. As for Shevlin, you don't think he was faking, do you?" "I do not," I answered. "But I am reminded that you were beside Ricori in the car when he was stabbed, and I cannot help wondering how it was that you discovered Shevlin so quickly today." "Meaning by that?" he asked. "Meaning," I answered, "that your drunken man has disappeared. Meaning that it would be entirely possible for him to have been your confederate. Meaning that the episode which so impressed the worthy Shevlin could very well have been merely a clever bit of acting, and the doll in the street and the opportunely speeding automobile a carefully planned maneuver to bring about the exact result it had accomplished. After all, I have only your word, and the chauffeur's word, that the doll was not down in the car the whole time you were here last night. Meaning that—" I stopped, realizing that essentially I was only venting upon him the bad temper aroused by my perplexity. "I'll finish for you," he said. "Meaning that I'm the one behind the whole thing." His face was white and his muscles tense. "It's a good thing for you that I like you, Doc," he continued. "It's a better thing for you that I know you're on the level with the boss. Best of all, maybe that you're the only one who can help him, if he can be helped. That's all." "McCann," I said, "I'm sorry, deeply sorry. Not for what I said, but for having to say it. After all, the doubt is there, and it is a reasonable doubt. You must admit that. And better to spread it before you than keep it hidden." "What might be my motive?" "Ricori has powerful enemies. He also has powerful friends. How convenient to his enemies if he could be wiped out without suspicion, and a physician of the highest repute and unquestionable integrity be inveigled into giving the death a clean bill of health. It is my professional pride, not personal egotism, that I am that kind of a physician, McCann." He nodded. His face softened, and I saw the dangerous tenseness relax. "I've no argument, Doc. Not on that or nothing else you've said. But I'm thanking you for your high opinion of my brains. It'd certainly take a pretty clever man to work all this out this way. Sort of like one of them cartoons that shows 75 gimcracks set up to drop a brick on a man's head exactly 20 minutes, 16 seconds after 2 in the afternoon. Yeah, I must be clever. I winced at this broad sarcasm, but did not answer. McCann took up the Peters doll and began to examine it. I went to the phone to ask Ricori's condition. I was halted by an exclamation from the gunman. He beckoned me, and handing me the doll, pointed to the collar of its coat. I felt about it. My fingers touched what seemed to be the round head of a large pin. I pulled out, as though from a dagger sheath, a slender piece of metal 9 inches long. It was thinner than an average hat-pin, rigid and needle-pointed. Instantly I knew that I was looking upon the instrument that had pierced Ricori's heart.
Another outrage,
McCann drawled.
Maybe I put it there, Doc.
You could have, McCann. He laughed. I studied the queer blade, for blade it surely was. It appeared to be of finest steel, although I was not sure it was that metal. Its rigidity was like none I knew. The little knob at the head was 1/2 inch in diameter, and less like a pinhead than the haft of a poniard. Under the magnifying glass it showed small grooves upon it, as though to make sure the grip of a hand. A doll's hand, a doll's dagger! There were stains upon it. I shook my head impatiently and put the thing aside, determining to test those stains later. They were bloodstains, I knew that. But I must make sure. And yet, if they were, it would not be certain proof of the incredible that a doll's hand had used this deadly thing. I picked up the Peters doll and began to study it minutely. I could not determine of what it was made. It was not of wood, like the other doll. More than anything else, the material resembled a fusion of gum and wax. I knew of no such composition. I stripped it of the clothing. The undamaged part of the doll was anatomically perfect. The hair was human hair, carefully planted in the scalp. The eyes were blue crystals of some kind. The clothing showed the same extraordinary skill in the making as the clothes of Diana's doll. I saw now that the dangling leg was not held by a thread. It was held by a wire. Evidently the doll had been molded upon a wire framework. I walked over to my instrument cabinet and selected a surgical saw and knives.
Wait a minute, Doc.
McCann had been following my movements.
You gonna cut this thing apart?
I nodded. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a heavy hunting knife. Before I could stop him, he had brought its blade down like an axe across the neck of the Peters doll. It cut through it cleanly. He took the head and twisted it. A wire snapped. He dropped the head on the table and tossed the body to me. The head rolled. It came to a rest against the cord he had called the witch's ladder. The head seemed to twist and to look up at us. I thought for an instant the eyes flared redly, the features to contort, the malignancy to intensify, as I had seen it intensify upon Peters's living face. I caught myself up angrily. A trick of the light, of course. I turned to McCann and swore. Why did you do that?
You are worth more to the boss than I am,
he said cryptically. I did not answer. I cut open the decapitated body of the doll. As I had suspected, it had been built upon a wire framework. As I cut away the encasing material, I found this framework was a single wire, or a single metal strand, and that as cunningly as the doll's body had been shaped, just as cunningly had this wire been twisted into an outline of the human skeleton. Not, of course, with minute fidelity, but still with amazing accuracy. There were no joints or articulations. The substance of which the doll was made was astonishingly pliant, the little hands flexible. It was more like dissecting some living mannequin than a doll, and it was rather dreadful. I glanced toward the severed head. McCann was bending over it, staring down into its eyes, his own not more than a few inches away from the glinting blue crystals. His hands clutched the table edge, and I saw that they were strained and tense as though he were making a violent effort to push himself away. When he had tossed the head upon the table, it had come to rest against the knotted cord. But now that cord was twisted around the doll's severed neck and around its forehead, as though it were a small serpent. And distinctly I saw that McCann's face was moving closer. slowly closer to that tiny one, as though it were being drawn to it, and that in the little face a living evil was concentrated, and that McCann's face was a face of horror. "McCann!" I cried, and thrust an arm under his chin, jerking back his head. And as I did this, I could have sworn the doll's eyes turned to me, and that its lips writhed. McCann staggered back. He stared at me for a moment, and then he leaped to the table. He picked up the doll's head, dashed it to the floor, brought his heel down upon it, again and again, like one stamping out the life of a venomous spider. Before he ceased, the head was a shapeless blotch, all semblance of humanity or anything else crushed out of it. But within it, the 2 blue crystals that had been its eyes still glinted, and the knotted cord of the witch's ladder still wound through it. God, it was drawing me down to it. McCann lighted a cigarette with shaking hand, tossed the match away. The match fell upon what had been the doll's head. There followed, simultaneously, a brilliant flash, a disconcerting sobbing sound, and a wave of intense heat. Where the crushed head had been, there was now only an irregularly charred spot upon the polished wood. Within it lay the blue crystals that had been the eyes of the doll, lusterless and blackened. The knotted cord had vanished, and the body of the doll had disappeared. Upon the table was a nauseous puddle of black waxy liquid, out of which lifted the ribs of the wire skeleton. The annex's phone rang. Mechanically, I answered it. "Yes," I said. "What is it?"
"Mr. Ricori, sir. He's out of the coma. He's awake."
I turned to McCann. "Ricori's come through." He gripped my shoulders, then drew a step away, a touch of awe on his face.
"Yeah?"
whispered McCann.
"Yeah. He came through when the knots burned. It freed him. It's you and me that's got to watch our step now."
Burn, Witch, Burn, written by Abraham Merritt. Edward E. French speaking. This audiobook reading of Burn, Witch, Burn is copyright 2019 by Edward E. French and EFI, all rights reserved. A copyright exists on all recordings issued by Edward E. French. Any unauthorized broadcasting, public performance, copying, or re-recording of these audiobooks in any manner whatsoever will constitute an infringement of such copyright. Editing, alteration, copying, or redistribution inconsistent with copyright laws is prohibited, whether by digital, electronic, or other means. Links may be used, provided that full and clear credit is given to Edward E. French with appropriate and specific direction to the original content. Direct inquiries regarding this recording to email Edward E. French at edwardfrench06@hotmail.com. Subscribe to the Fiction Fantastique channel. It's on YouTube at www.youtube.com/FrenchEdward06.